What's up, everybody? I'm about to give you guys 3 hooks, drop shotting. We're going to talk about drop shotting today, and 3 hooks is all you're going to need. This is all I use to cover all applications of drop shotting. One I probably use 90% of the time, and there's a few more that I use kind of situationally. And a lot of people are starting to get away from just your standard nose hook drop shot. I say a lot of people. But there are a few people that are starting to get away from that. That is still something that I use when the situation presents itself. But if you saw St. Lawrence River, really the 3 northern events are St. Lawrence River, Champlain, and then in St. Clair, Michigan, I was drop shotting like this, especially when I'm drop shotting in current. You know, I'm starting to go more with a through body approach. This right here, that this hook is in, is actually that Missile Baits bomb shot. But this right here, and drop shotting it's very important to be very efficient in how you're fishing this bait. You need to get more casts in and more effective casts in, and this is a way to do that. And the reason we started going with this too is, you know, a lot of places we go up north have a lot of bait fish. You know, most of them are yellow perch. We get in the St. Lawrence River, there's gobies everywhere, and you're making drifts and current and you're making casts, and you constantly feel the bait fish eating on it, and the next thing you know, you reel it up and your worm's halfway off or it's completely gone, and you're gonna run into that a lot with the nose hook bait. So started using these through hooks, and this right here that I have is a number 2 Gamakatsu G-Finesse stinger hook. These things are incredibly sticky. They stay up. You know, my buddy Ed Lochran actually tied, which is very important, tied bait keep on it for me, as you can see right there. So this is gonna hold this Missile Baits bomb shot in place all of the time, and it's extremely hard for a yellow perch or a goby to take this thing off of there. And also too, I found in the St. Lawrence River last year when I was nose hooking a lot of my worms and baits that, you know, a lot of times I would bring it up and it would just be completely gone. But also it's like the smallmouth like to taste it, and they like to feel it first before they get it in their mouths. And with this hook, guys, 95% of the time, that fish is hooked right through the roof of the mouth, exactly where you want it. Just remember, drop shot, hook point penetration is 100% the first key thing that you want to make sure that you get. So make sure you have the right setup too, and I'll show you here in a minute. But that is a number 2 Gamakatsu G-Finesse stinger hook with a bait keep tied on it. Make sure you're making efficient cast and you're keeping the bait where it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to look most of the time. And this, you know, using this style of hook and a through body, no matter what you're throwing out there, is going to let you be a lot more efficient too. So with that being said, I throw that one on a lot, especially if I'm fishing for smallmouth. I like to fish in a lot of current. That's going to keep my bait running straight. It's going to keep it straight, keep the worm on there for the maximum time possible. So I can be more efficient with that, especially in current. So, you know, the second method is the one that I just talked to you guys about. Is probably the most common way. You know, this right here is just a standard. It's a number 2 G-Finesse drop shot hook. You know, nosed hook onto a Missile Baits bomb shot right here. Now, I still will go to these, but I go to these situational. This is a situation where if I'm trying to catch an individual fish, if I'm trying to catch very pressured fish, you know, fish that are seeing baits all the time and you're fishing behind people, you know, having this nose hook will actually give this bait, especially in current, but it'll give it more action. You know, when you're sitting there and you're sitting there and you're working the tip really good, and this bait will really dance around, and it gives the bait a lot more action. And sometimes it'll get more strikes when the fish just get inactive or they're highly pressured. So I still will go to this nose hook when the conditions, you know, kind of call for it. Slick, calm, the fish just really don't want to eat. You can get more action and maybe get another bite or 2 on this one. So it's not going away, but I tend to go with the through body hook more these days than I used to. Now the third method, and I do use this one a lot because I love to fish isolated man-made cover, especially for smallmouth, and for largemouth as well. And if you're gonna, this is just a standard robo worm. If you're gonna throw a worm like this could be for largemouth as well. And I use this a lot for largemouth as well. But especially smallmouth, I love to fish isolated cover. And to be efficient, you need to make sure you're throwing something that you're not getting snagged or hung up all the time, or if you're in grass, you don't constantly have grass on your worm. So I will go up to, this right here is a 1/0 Gamakatsu. This is a finesse heavy cover hook. You can see it's got a bait keep on it, so you can run your worm up there, and you can Texas rig it and just run it through the worm. Just make sure you can feel that hook point exposure barely coming out the bottom when you rig this thing. But I want to be more efficient. I'm not going to throw the other two styles with the exposed hooks when I'm fishing isolated cover. It could be a boat dock, it could be a mooring buoy, anything like that, because you'll get hung up on them. And I want to be more efficient. And I actually find that those individual fish that like to hold on small, isolated, man-made pieces of structure are actually not as spooky as the rest of them are. I've gotten right on top of them before. I've gotten hung up on chains, on buoys, got right over the top of it, got it unhung, and dropped the bail right down to the bottom in 10 foot of water, and the fish eat it. I mean, while I'm on top of it. I actually find that they're more of nomads, and they're aggressive, and they like to run other fish off, and I think they just kind of are a little easier to catch. So I will go to this bigger style hook, Texas rig it, and I'll go up to 10-pound fluorocarbon. I want to make sure we get a really good hook in that fish, especially with this setup. And I just actually find that they're a little less line shy and a little less spooky in those types of environments. So these are 3 different hooks, guys, that you can throw on any situation. There are so many different hooks out there. Gamakatsu's got all 3 of these readily available, and this is really all that I use. Again, if you have a certain style of drop shotting and you don't lose fish and you find that you're efficient, then don't change. But here's 3 hooks that I can keep in my boat at all times, and I can cover all the bases. And the other thing, last but not least, is your setup. And I have, traditionally, you think of drop shotting, you think of medium light to light action rods, real limber tips and stuff like that. And that's what I started doing a few years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago. And I've kind of went away from that. I went to a heavier power rod, faster tip, because hook point penetration is key. And if you get a good hook in them fish, your chances of landing them goes way up. And I find with that medium light or a light action rod, I was having problems getting the hook in them, especially when you're fishing deep, and especially when you're fishing in current. So this right here is just a 7-foot, the new Legend Extreme that you hear me guys talking about all the time, guys. This is a very expensive rod. It is an absolute dream in your hand, and it's not for everybody's budget, but St. Croix makes an incredible line of rods that you can use. But I'm typically a 7-foot to 7.2, I'm a medium power with a fast tip. And this is a heavy rod. This is almost more of a wacky worm rod, but I'm starting to use it for drop shot because I'm getting the hook in. I'm getting good hooks in the fish, even deep, even in current, and I have absolutely no issues landing them with this. 15-pound braid, typically I'll do an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, 12 to 15 foot of it or so. Sometimes I will go up to 10 and 12, especially if I'm fishing some heavier cover or isolated cover like we just talked about. But guys, Gamakatsu's got, they've been around a long time. They put a lot of time and effort into their R&D, and these hooks are absolutely gold. So just remember, simplify, make sure you're being efficient, and make sure that your bait is staying in the water for more casts, longer periods of time, and you're going to catch more fish. If you guys have any questions about any of these products or more about the setup that I'm using, shoot me a message. I'll be glad to answer it for you guys, and I hope this helps. And I hope having these hooks in your box puts more fish in your boat. Thank you guys for watching. We'll talk to y'all soon. Dream big.